Coaches and Ceremonies. Ethel's newfound friendship with Mr. Dry spurred her to work even harder. Her cheerful whistles became rallying cries for the workmen. The childrens were on their best behavior, but that didn't stop Ethel hurrying them. "Come on, you rascals," she corralled. "Railways aren't built on work-shy wagons." "The railway's not on us, we're on it," they groaned. "And we should like to ensure they stay on it." Topham smirked knowingly.
Yes, of course, Mr. Hatt."
Ethel blushed. Then, one day, it happened. A rapturous cheering echoed around the worksite. Ethel wheeshed in surprise. "They might warn an engine before they start hooting and hollering." "They've finished the line, Ethel," Topham laughed. "Your line." Ethel's scowl vanished at once.
"Oh, sir, when can I start pulling trains?"
"We must have the grand opening first. That reminds me, I have a surprise for you." 2 coaches were snoring softly when Ethel reached the shed.
"Oh, they're lovely, Mr. Hatt," Ethel observed. "But they'll get awfully dirty hauling all those loads from the mine."
"A good thing they'll only be carrying passengers," Topham chuckled. "You'll find them quite an improvement over the wagons." With that, he bid her good night and made for home. As the crunch of gravel underfoot faded, the coaches stirred.
"Oh, Lottie," yawned the first coach. "I think that's her. The kettle."
"Been talking to the workmen, have you?" the little engine laughed. "I'd prefer Ethel, if you please." "Rather particular, isn't she, Lila?" the second coach remarked. Ethel was taken aback. "I beg your pardon?" "Taken from our home, from our sisters, for this?" Lottie sneered. "I'm sorry," Ethel said sympathetically, "but speaking from experience, this home isn't so bad."
"Says you," Lila scoffed. "We've had plenty of time to look around. Don't think this line will last a month."
"I worked hard on this line, I'll have you know," Ethel fumed. "It's the best railway there is."
"Try again, dear," Lila retorted. "Passengers want to arrive at stations, not the sea, and that's bound to happen on these rickety rails. This line is all rod and tackle."
"Ramshackle, Lila," Lottie corrected.
"Oh, tomato, potato,"
Lila scoffed. As the coaches bickered, Ethel fell into silence. She'd been proud of her work. So had Mr. Dry and Topham. Now, she wondered if her pride was misplaced. She had a strange dream that night. She was traveling towards the headland, a great ribbon hanging above the rails. People cheered, and a band played. But as she broke through the ribbon, the track before her collapsed into the sea. There was nothing but a long drop, and as the cheers and music continued, she fell. Deeper and deeper, closer and closer to the waves until... "Ethel, wake up!" Topham and Mr. Dry stood outside the shed in the early morning sun.
"Oh, good morning, sirs," she yawned. "I had the strangest dream."
"No time for that now," Mr. Dry proclaimed, "for today is the day our dream comes to fruition." "Come along," Topham said. "We must get ready for the celebrations." By the time they'd finished polishing her, Ethel had forgotten her dream. Even the coaches seemed less piqued after a good cleaning. At last, when the men had changed into their best clothes, they made for the grand opening.
"Opening my line! Opening my line!" Ethel bubbled. "Closing in no time. Closing in no time,"
cackled Lila and Lottie impishly. But even the coaches smiled when they reached the ceremony site. Ethel had never seen such a crowd. The workmen had brought their families. The townsfolk had come to witness the occasion. There was even a band playing. Beyond the ribbon that hung above the tracks, the rails were perfectly intact. Ethel was relieved, but thought back to her dream. Once I pass the ribbon, she thought.
Not that you will, Lila sniffed. They've put that up to stop you going down the line. A proper engine must be on its way, Lottie added.
Before Ethel could reply, Mr. Dry's voice boomed from a nearby podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for gathering on this auspicious occasion. Today signals great change in how we travel, how we work, how we connect. The men amongst you have toiled tirelessly to make this happen. It gives me great pleasure to show you the fruits of their labor." To a chorus of claps, Mr. Dry and Topham climbed back onto Ethel's footplate, while the workmen boarded the coaches for their inaugural ride. "This is it," Mr. Dry whispered gleefully. "The big moment." Ethel had to admit she felt rather small, but tried to be brave as she crawled forward. Closer and closer she came to the ribbon, visions of her dream flooding back to her. Suddenly, the band played a loud, sharp sting of triumph, which only served to startle her. Wheesh! An enormous cloud of steam enveloped the train. When it cleared, Mr. Dry and Topham were completely soaked. The onlookers gasped. "I declare this line open," Mr. Dry boomed. Puzzled cheers greeted this. "I also declare that a change of attire is in order," he finished with a laugh, pulling the whistle as they journeyed on.
"I'm sorry, sirs," Ethel cried.
"Only a bit of water," Topham soothed. "Perhaps we'll have to ask the band to, tone down the arrangements in future."
"Only a bit of water?"
Lila and Lottie had been soaked too. They were fuming.
"It'll be a wonder if we don't rot to pieces."
"Sounds like something that would only happen to ramshackle coaches," Ethel smirked. "At least you kept your passengers dry." The coaches muttered crossly to each other, but Ethel didn't care. As she journeyed around the headland, she sighed with relief. The rails were sturdy, the ground was firm, and the waves below gently lapped at the cliffsides. It was far from perilous. It was peaceful. "Yes," she smiled to herself, "my peaceful little line."